Lonely CEO offered $50 to play dad for just one day. What happened next is incredibly touching. Daniel Montgomery was the commander of the Skyscraper, a titan of industry. At 38, he steered his Fortune 500 company with confidence, earning respect from colleagues and envy from competitors. But on this gray morning, as rain tattooed against the glass walls of his sleek office, the vibrant city outside churned in a frenzy he felt utterly disconnected from. His heart gnawed at him, an emptiness echoing within the concrete confines of success. Behind his polished exterior, shadows loomed larger than ever, the estrangement from his father, a man whose sacrifices had paved the way for Daniel's ambitions. It felt like a cruel irony that in his relentless pursuit of recognition and status, he lost the most important connection of all. When the ad for $50 to play dad for a day flickered across his screen, curiosity eclipsed his routine. How absurd, yet somehow intriguing. Without a second thought, he clicked, drawn into a world of possibilities where he could be something more than an executive. As he waited nervously for the boy's arrival, a mixture of dread and excitement tangled within him. What if he wasn't good enough? What if his own solitude crushed the child's vibrant spirit? Our society often frowns upon such vulnerability. Whispers of judgment hung in Daniel's mind like a noose. But soon, the door swung open to reveal Max, a 10-year-old whirlwind of energy with sparkling eyes and an infectious laugh. The boy's laughter filled the sterile office, brushing aside the dust of isolation that had clung to Daniel for years. Each high-pitched giggle echoed, stirring a sense of nostalgia he hadn't felt since childhood. They ventured out in the downpour, slipping into adventure, but Daniel could hardly breathe beneath the weight of his own internal conflict. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A trip to the park unleashed a torrent of shared joys. They tossed a baseball back and forth, laughter shimmering in the air, hinting at what could have been. With every thrown pitch, Daniel felt a break in emotional dam, a longing that had festered in silence for far too long. They built paper planes, tasted ice cream, and wrestled in the grass, but with each moment of innocence, Daniel's heart twisted tighter around the unspoken truths he clung to. What had he sacrificed? But as the sun dipped and the skyline glimmered against the dusky sky, reality shattered their bliss. Max's mother faced a sudden emergency, and in the frantic moments that followed, Daniel was thrust into a moral crisis. Help the boy or answer the relentless demands of his corporate machine? The disapproving stares of colleagues loomed in his mind, shackling him with societal expectations he had never questioned before. The dread of returning to his empty office to pore over spreadsheets clashed against the fear of losing the only connection he had dared to forge. Daniel's heart raced, a storm of dread swirling within him, as he considered the impending choice looming like a jagged cliff before him. He could step over the edge into connection, or retreat to the hollow comfort of an ambition that only fed his isolation. The ticking clock refused to relent, tightening its grip around his racing thoughts. What does success mean if it comes at the expense of love? The questions screamed for attention, mingling with the desperate look in Max's eyes, consuming Daniel as if the world around them had faded away completely. The onset of a truth threatened to crash into his carefully built facade, and the weight of his decision hung, unresolved, in the air. The clock continued its relentless countdown, splitting Daniel's thoughts into fragments of possibility. Confronted by Max's wide-eyed innocence, every second pulsed with urgency. The boy's mother was in need, and Daniel held the key to his own emotional awakening. Those glimmering skyscrapers that filled the city skyline, symbols of his career triumphs, now felt like prison bars, detaining him in a life devoid of joy. His reflection in the office window seemed alien, a man shaped by spreadsheets and PowerPoint slides, yet here he was, yearning for the authenticity of human connection. He could hear the faint sound of Max's laughter as it echoed in his mind, a haunting reminder of how far removed he truly was from emotional fulfillment. What had been so important just minutes ago faded into the background. The practical, profit-driven decisions felt less compelling when placed against the backdrop of his reluctant yet growing bond with this child. What if I just walk away? He thought bitterly. No one would understand, yet the weight of guilt pressed heavier than the responsibilities he piled upon himself. It was this same sense of responsibility that kept him shackled to a life void of meaning. The emptiness echoed louder, resonating within the hollow walls of ambition that he deconstructed around himself. Daniel looked down at Max, who was shifting nervously from foot to foot, trying to mask his concern with a brave smile. This courageous little boy had entered his sterile office space and turned it into a shared world of laughter and possibility. Could he really abandon him now? The choice loomed larger than any corporate merger he had ever executed. Determination ignited within him, a long-forgotten fire stoked by the urgency of the moment. I have to do this, he finally whispered, almost to himself. I can't let him down. The words felt foreign on his tongue, yet they summoned a liberating clarity within him. He grasped his phone, his fingers hesitating over the screen. Every part of him felt electrified. Max, he said, his voice steady, we need to go to your mom. Max's expression shifted from anxiety to relief, and for the first time that day, he beamed with an innocence that bathed the room in light. In that moment, Daniel understood something profound. Life wasn't measured in the profit margins or the facade of success. It was measured in moments of connection, of empathy, of showing up for others when it truly mattered. As they dashed through the rain towards the hospital, Daniel made a mental note. He had an idea, a burgeoning realization that being present for someone else meant investing in relationships over rigid schedules. The warmth of connection comforted him, dissolving the icy walls that had encased his heart for too long. But just as hope began to unfurl, Daniel's disbelief crept in. Could he actually handle the burden of caring again? The urgency twisted into anxiety. What if he failed? What if he wasn't the ideal father figure Max expected? Arriving at the hospital, the fluorescent lights burned bright, framing the scene before him, a stark contrast to the warmth he just experienced. The familiar world of corporate hierarchy felt distant now, but doubts clawed at him. It was no longer about the money or the day. It was about confronting the qualities he had buried under layers of ambition and emotional detachment. As they navigated the sterile hallways, Daniel's resolve strengthened. The ticking clock wasn't a countdown, it was an invitation to redefine his life, to honor the fragile, beautiful ties that connect human souls. Yet as he took a deep breath, ready to face whatever awaited him, a familiar face turned the corner, a coworker from his company who had an eye for detail and a reputation for sharp criticism. The confrontation was inevitable, and Daniel felt the ground beneath him shift. Could he afford to let his professional identity unravel in front of the very people he feared? The moment hung in the air, thick with tension, ripe with the possibility of challenge. Would he cling to the remnants of his past or embrace a new path? The choice he made next would not just define the day, it would redefine who he became. Daniel's heart raced as he locked eyes with his coworker, Joan, who stood there with an expression that combined curiosity and disappointment. Her presence felt like a spotlight, illuminating the dichotomy of his life. Just moments ago, he had taken a leap towards vulnerability, brushing against a world filled with raw emotions, laughter, and personal connections. Now, here he was, clinging to the remnants of a meticulously crafted professional identity, unsure of what to reveal. Daniel? She asked, tilting her head slightly, as if trying to decipher the man before her. What are you doing here? He hesitated, his thoughts swirling. He could feel the sharp edges of the corporate world pushing against the softness he had just begun to unveil within himself. I'm with Max, he finally said, deciding to lean into his new reality rather than retreating back into his old self. We're here to see his mom. Joan's brow furrowed, disbelief etched across her face. Max? The boy from the neighborhood? I didn't realize you had taken on that kind of responsibility. She regarded him with a mixture of skepticism and intrigue. Yes, well, he stammered, battling the weight of her scrutiny, it's complicated. He could sense the judgment simmering beneath her words, longing to spiral into a confrontation about his choices. Yet he felt a flicker of determination break through the cloud of her critical gaze. This was who he needed to be: honest, practical, invested in the boy whose future he didn't want to jeopardize. Interesting how the world of business and personal life collide, isn't it? Joan's tone was laced with condescension that could slice through steel. It struck a nerve, forcing Daniel to evaluate her perception and his own place within this intersection. Yes, it is, he replied, forcing levity into his voice. But beneath the surface, the shadows of doubt still lurked. Was he equipped for this? For being Max's support? Yet another small realization blossomed. If Daniel was truly building relationships and striving towards connection, then confronting this judgment was a necessary step towards freedom. I'm surprised to see you not buried in spreadsheets, Joan continued, clearly unable to contain her disbelief. Something snapped inside him. Maybe you'd be surprised by what else I can manage, he snapped back, feeling a surge of assertiveness. This isn't about spreadsheets or getting numbers right. It's about being there for someone who needs it. Something I apparently underestimated. Joan's expression shifted slightly, perhaps registering his newfound conviction, but she recovered quickly, her critical stance re-establishing itself. Well, good luck with that, she said, a condescending smile plastered on her face as she turned to leave, her footsteps echoing down the sterile corridor. A powerful wave of anger surged through Daniel, but it was laced with relief as well. He had spoken up. He had paved a tiny path toward confronting the authority the corporate world had over him. And in that moment, he realized, his identity didn't solely reside in climbing the corporate ladder or in the opinions of those who dwelled in that world. It now included being present for Max, being a beacon of hope in the midst of darkness. He knelt down to Max, who had been trying to absorb the exchange in silence. Hey, are you okay? Daniel asked, his voice softening again. Max met his gaze with wide eyes, momentarily losing his uncertainty. I don't care what she thinks, Daniel. You're helping me. Daniel was surprised by the depth of Max's conviction. It was a shift, a proposal to embrace this brave new world ahead of them, free from prying eyes and harsh judgments. Understanding his true priorities, he stood tall alongside the boy. A partnership was forming, anchored by shared experiences and a mutual desire to support each other. As they continued toward the hospital room, an idea flickered to life in Daniel's mind. Perhaps he could help Max in ways beyond the immediate crisis, spending a day together, creating space for laughter and understanding. Then, he could truly foster the genuine human connection he had yearned for. But just as they reached the door, uncertainty knotted within him again. What if he failed in this new role? What if he was incapable of providing the reassurance Max needed? The haunting questions returned, compounded by the weight of his responsibilities. Gathering himself, he pushed the door open, taking the first step into uncharted territory. But the clenching fear mingled with excitement, building tension around him as he prepared for whatever awaited. What would he discover about himself in these moments that could change everything? Little did he know, the real test of his character and the real journey was about to begin. Walking into the hospital room, Daniel was first struck by the sterile scent that filled the air, a sharp contrast to the warmth he had just felt walking with Max. The muted beeping of monitors formed a backdrop to the soft murmurs of other patients, but in this moment, all he could focus on was Max's trembling hand, now clutched in his own. Will she be okay? Max's voice broke the silence, shaking with uncertainty. Daniel swallowed hard, trying to project calm. She's going to be fine, Max. We're here for her. He wished he could sprinkle his words with certainty, but doubt gnawed at him. Could he really be the anchor Max needed? The doubt had sprouted in him once again, intertwining with the burgeoning determination he felt moments earlier. As they approached the bed, Daniel leaned in to assess the frail figure resting there. Mrs. Langley was pale, her frailty stark against the pillow. A wave of empathy surged through him. He thought of Max's courage and vulnerability, a mirror of his own battles fought under the surface. This realization illuminated a path forward. He had fought a silent battle of his own and was now poised to take this first step alongside a courageous boy. Hey, Max, want to tell her how you're doing? Daniel suggested gently, knowing the boy needed a purpose to ground his fears. Max hesitated, but with a tilt of his head and a break in his voice, he shared fragments of his day's school, friends, the latest video games. Daniel watched, profoundly aware of the courage it took for this boy to speak with hope amidst uncertainty. Perhaps this connection was symbiotic. The strength Max found in Daniel was mirrored in Daniel's ability to be there for him. "Looks like she's waking up," Daniel said, nudging Max gently. Without the harsh glare of judgment from Joan to cloud his mind, he could glimpse his own emerging identity, one built on emotional support rather than corporate numbers. "Max?" Mrs. Langley's voice was a rasp, but there was an unmistakable warmth to it as she recognized the boy at her side. "You came." "Of course. I brought Daniel. He said he would help me." The pride in Max's declaration surprised Daniel, filling him with a sense of purpose. An unexpected confidence began to swell within him. He wasn't just a temporary figure in Max's life, he was becoming a steady force in the boy's story. There was significance in that, a calling that transcended corporate ladders and spreadsheets. As they spoke around the bed, Daniel contemplated how this moment could become a stepping stone toward deeper connections. It illuminated a burgeoning sense of responsibility brewing within him, a fierce desire to ensure children like Max had someone fighting for them, advocating beyond the walls of his sterile office. This realization ignited a determination to rally support, not just financial but emotional. Yet, as the conversation flowed, Daniel suddenly experienced a pang of disquiet. Was he truly equipped to navigate this multifaceted role? Was it enough just to show up? The pressure of that ambiguous responsibility weighed heavily on his shoulders, but in the warmth of Max's hand, he found a small flicker of resilience. It was as if their bond was both a challenge and a reprieve from the demanding expectations of his professional life. "You know, Daniel," Max blurted mid-laughter, "maybe you should play pretend more often. You're not just a suit." The boy's innocent suggestion inspired a swirl of emotion within him: longing, humor, anxiety, a reminder that authenticity and connection could stand alongside professionalism, not at odds with it. But the lurking question remained: what if he stepped too far outside his boundaries? What if this new path compromised his own career? Just as the laughter faded and thoughtful silence descended, another wave of determination flickered in Daniel's chest. Perhaps he could redefine his role, blending both his corporate acumen and emotional engagement. He needed to be a mentor, not just a caregiver. The shift toward enablement rather than mere support could forge lasting impacts. In that moment, Daniel decided to make a plan. He would explore ways to volunteer, help in organizing community events, mixing corporate strategies with personal engagement amongst the youth. But even as he began to sketch out his vision for the future, a seed of anxiety rooted itself deep in his mind. Was he ready for such a commitment? What would the implications be for his career? The tension grew as he looked toward Max, whose innocence contrasted sharply against the complexities of adult decisions. Together, they were evolving in unison, each pushing the other to explore new dimensions of growth. All the while, the hospital room became a crucible for Daniel. What would emerge from this melding of personal and professional life? Would the lessons learned here be enough to cross the divide between who he was and who he wanted to become? As hope battled fear within him, he realized that these choices could lead to just as many uncertainties as they could triumphs. Yet, the moment of truth approached. How far was he willing to go to redefine his identity? And with that question poised in his mind, Daniel understood something important: the real journey was only beginning. The next steps lay ahead, uncertain yet bursting with potential. The next day, Daniel stood at his desk, surrounded by the familiar chaos of his corporate life. Papers threatened to spill over the edges of his neatly organized workspace, but today, they were merely a backdrop to his thoughts swirling in contradiction. The sterile confines of his office felt weighty, almost suffocating, as he grappled with a newfound awareness ignited by his time with Max. The meeting scheduled for later was set to address quarterly projections, but Daniel found it hard to focus. He stared vacantly at the Excel sheet on his computer screen, numbers and graphs blurring together. It was another day in the grind, yet his mind couldn't escape the feeling that something vital was shifting within him, beyond the reach of spreadsheets. As his colleagues started to trickle in, Daniel's resolve to redefine his role washed over him again. How could he balance this corporate world he knew so well with the deeply personal experience he had shared with Max? He recalled the warmth of the child's laughter and the weight of their conversation. Those moments were richer than any KPI report. The meeting began, and as the discussion turned toward specific strategies for growth, Daniel felt himself disengaging. His usual corporate bravado waned as he considered a far more meaningful pursuit. Midway through the presentation, he interjected, surprising even himself, "What if we could focus on corporate responsibility initiatives that genuinely connect us with the community? We could positively influence young lives like Max's." Silence followed, shock echoing in the conference room. His colleagues exchanged hesitant glances, and Daniel sensed the tension in the air. Was this the right way to speak up? A voice of reason, or a foolish distraction? Doubt prickled at him, but he pressed on, propelled by the urge to forge deeper connections rather than languish in the emotional disconnect of profit margins. "Imagine if we offered mentorship programs or skill-building workshops for at-risk youth," he elaborated, his heart racing. "We could partner with local organizations to make a tangible impact. Not only would we boost our company's image, but we could genuinely change lives." A few nods appeared among the team, and that spark of support bolstered his courage. The risk of potential mockery faded in the face of a burgeoning advocacy for the young people he now felt responsible for. Still, he could sense his superior's skepticism lurking just beneath the surface. Joan's expression darkened, skepticism flickering in her eyes. "We can't lose sight of our financial goals, Daniel," she said pointedly, her voice dripping with disapproval. "You realize that, right? We can't play savior to every child in the city." Savior? The term felt harsh and yet not entirely inaccurate. This was what he feared most, being perceived as someone reaching beyond their station. Yet, in the cold face of reality, Daniel realized he was grappling with his own fear of stepping away from the expectations enforced by the corporate paradigm. His heart raced, fueled by anger and determination. "Of course, Joan," he responded, measuring each word carefully. "But what if we could drive profits through these initiatives? We can help marginalized groups while nurturing an environment of innovation and compassion. It could foster employee engagement and build a stronger company culture." Something flickered in the room, almost imperceptible but palpable. Colleagues listened more intently now, interest peaking at the thought of blending social responsibility with profitability. In that moment, Daniel felt the stir of a new vision, a confluence of purpose and passion he had long kept at bay. With the meeting winding down, he left the conference room, buoyed by possibilities. Yet anxiety accompanied him. The question remained how to navigate the treacherous waters of corporate resolve with personal purpose. As he returned to his desk, the questions he had faced lingered. Did venturing into this new territory risk everything: his career, his status? Was he ready to confront those who might oppose him? As Daniel sat down and stared out of his office window, the skyline of the city stretching before him, he knew he stood at the precipice of an uncharted journey. And in the depths of his soul, a quiet but persistent voice echoed back this was the moment he had been waiting for. Would he take the leap into this profound shift? Then, his phone buzzed, disrupting his thoughts. It was a message from Max. "Can we hang out again? I feel better when you're around." And there it was, the renewed urge to connect, the motivation to step beyond his limitations, fueled not only by Max's need but by his own aspirations to evolve into the person he was meant to be. But as he contemplated their next meeting, wouldn't his quest to balance corporate values with genuine care lead him into conflict he wasn't quite ready to face? The air felt charged with potential, but uncertainty loomed as Daniel prepared for what lay ahead. Could he truly merge these distinct aspects of his life, and how would others react when the time came for his vision to come to fruition? The path ahead promised to be anything but easy, and the tension of the journey was just beginning. Daniel stepped away from his desk, heart racing and mind swirling with thoughts. The bold expression of his ideas in the meeting had lit a fire in him, yet the flicker of doubt lingered. He was venturing into uncharted territory, questioning both his professional ambitions and personal motivations. How did he reconcile the corporation's demands with the ideals he felt rising within him? As he prepared to meet Max again, a decision began to coalesce in his mind. He would implement changes at work, starting small with a proposal for a mentorship initiative directed at local youth. A wave of determination coursed through him. He was done hiding behind the safe walls of corporate jargon. He grabbed a notepad, ready to outline his ideas. Time warped around him as he jotted down thoughts: mentorship meetings, organized workshops, potential partnerships with community organizations. Each stroke of the pen felt liberating, channeling the uncertainties that had clouded his perspective. This was not just about balancing profit and purpose, it was about transforming the very essence of how he viewed work, life, and fulfillment. Wouldn't the people in his company be more productive if they felt genuinely connected to their work and the lives impacted by it? He found joy in the process, his initial anxiety morphing into excitement with every idea that flowed onto the page. Yet a voice in the back of his mind warned him that these aspirations came with risks. Would Joan push back harder? Would his colleagues reject his enthusiasm outright? Each question hovered like an uninvited guest, threatening to spoil what had begun as a moment of triumph. The next day, armed with his notes, he scheduled a meeting with Joan, his supervisor. As he tapped on the keyboard to set it up, his heart pounded like the closing of a door he might not be able to reopen. In the pit of his stomach, fear coiled tightly. He envisioned Joan's disapproval, the roller coaster of office politics, and how these changes could backfire. The idea of presenting a more vulnerable side of himself to the corporate world unnerved him tremendously. When the day arrived, Daniel walked into her office, briefcase in hand, resolve simmering beneath the surface. The sunlight cut through the windows, saturating the room with its warmth, illuminating the contrasts in their conversation. He rehearsed his pitch in his mind, sensing Joan's entrenched skepticism even before he spoke a word. "Joan, I've been thinking," he began, his voice steady yet tinged with apprehension. "What if we explored new ways to engage with the community? I believe it could enhance our company culture and drive employee satisfaction, while positively impacting the lives of at-risk youth." The brow above Joan's eyes furrowed, and her gaze hardened, unreadable. "Daniel, have you forgotten we're in a budget crisis? We need to focus on cuts and core performance to survive, not take on charity projects." The risk of rejection clutched at Daniel's heart, yet he pressed on, emboldened by a blend of passion and desperation. "I understand our priorities, but this could become part of our story, a competitive edge that separates us from other companies. We can inspire both our employees and the youth we reach out to." Joan remained silent for a moment, visibly conflicted. Daniel felt the weight of her hesitation and knew this was more than just professional, it was deeply personal. He had opened a door to his own vulnerabilities, and now he awaited her response, uncertain of what lay beyond. The tension built palpably, their identities entwined through corporate roles and the emotional weight of ambition. The stakes felt personal, as if they were unearthing pieces of their true selves. But success for him would come at a price. And just when he thought the conversation would end without resolution, her expression shifted. A flicker of intrigue mixed with wariness crossed her features. Daniel's heart surged. Maybe there was hope to be found amid this storm. Before he could gather his thoughts, her eyes sharpened. "Let us say I entertain your suggestions. You'll need to prepare a solid proposal detailing how this could feasibly work in our budget. If you can show me numbers on potential engagement and profitability, I may just be willing to consider it." A thrill rushed through Daniel, and he knew he had to step up his game. He would dive deeper into the numbers, connecting them to the very real human stories he hoped to tell, the lifeblood of any initiative he aimed to champion. Yet as he left her office, a new uncertainty nested within him. Was he prepared to face the inevitable pushback from colleagues who clung to traditional values? Energized but rattled, he made for the door, determination rekindled in his veins. Whatever happened next was bound to challenge him in ways he had yet to imagine. Thinking of Max and their conversations, he understood that his journey was just beginning. Taking a breath, he dialed Max. "Hey, can we meet sooner? I have some ideas I'd like to share." In that moment, he felt a fundamental shift, the burgeoning belief that he wasn't just helping Max, he was redefining his own path, preparing to confront not only the corporate environment but also his own fears. But as his phone buzzed in his hand, a nagging thought emerged: would he embrace this change fully, or would the shadows of doubt pull him back into safety? The road ahead beckoned with both promise and peril, he could feel it. Daniel gazed at the fresh proposal spread out before him, a mixture of fervor and anxiety simmering beneath his calm exterior. As he sat at his desk, surrounded by his thoughts and the quiet hum of the office, the computer screen displayed graphs and metrics that danced before his eyes like a frenetic symphony. Each number represented not just figures but lives interconnected. They were stories waiting to be written, and for the first time in a long while, he felt himself as the scriptwriter. He took a moment to breathe deeply, letting the air fill his lungs and clear the fog of doubt that had crept in since his meeting with Joan. Now he'd need to not just present ideas but also navigate the complexities of presenting them in a way that could resonate with his colleagues. He envisioned his coworkers, their eyes falling on potholed budgets and fragmented teamwork, inevitably skeptical of anything that diverged from the status quo. Trying to focus, he muttered to himself quietly, "This is not just about charity. It's about business. It's about us." The mantra became a gentle reminder and a shield against the turmoil swirling in his mind. He knew that presenting his proposal meant not only demonstrating its potential benefits but also addressing the underlying fears lurking among those of his peers, the fear of failure, of change, of losing grip on the familiar. No one wanted to stir the pot unless they felt safe. So, how could he make them perceive safety in venturing into this uncharted territory while also ensuring that profits did not dwindle? With papers scattered around him and coffee forgotten on the corner of his desk, Daniel began crafting an introduction for his upcoming meeting with the team. He needed to create a narrative that highlighted the merit of his mentorship initiative while injecting a dose of hard data. Anxiety mounted with each bullet point he listed, but increasingly, clarity emerged. He would bring in past success stories of mentorship programs from other companies, revealed metrics that showed an increase in employee retention and satisfaction tied to community involvement, and most importantly he would prepare to share his personal motivation as an anchoring force. As he worked late into the evening, feeling the pulsating energy of ambition, the tension he lived with allowed him to tap into reservoirs of resolve he hadn't known existed. Each tap of the keyboard was an affirmation. He was redefining who he was at his core. The growing certainty settled within him like a warm embrace, shifting his perspective from fear to exhilaration. Daniel leaned back in his chair, reflecting. The idea of embracing vulnerability became pivotal. In sharing his story and the struggles he faced, he could foster an authentic connection with his colleagues, showcasing that this initiative was not merely a corporate experiment but a bridge crossing into their shared humanity. The hesitation of uncertainty that had once plagued him began to dissipate, revealing a pathway illuminated by purpose. Yet, even in his contemplation, an unsettling thought pierced through the growing clarity: the impending reactions from Joan and the team. Would they see the vision he saw? Or would they dismiss it as idealistic folly? The reality settled like lead in his chest, and no matter how fervently he believed in the numbers and the potential, it remained that their acceptance was not guaranteed. Rising from his chair, he decided to take a break. Stretching his limbs, he strolled down the office hall, considering how best to approach the discussion on the eve of his presentation. As he paused to look out the window, a cityscape bathed in vibrant sunset hues, he felt a rush of hope tempered by the icy grip of apprehension. He was poised on the edge of opportunity but knew that falling would remain a possibility. He could almost hear Max's encouraging voice bounce in his head, urging him to be unyielding, to embrace the challenge ahead. Their conversations had built him up, like bricks laying a foundation, yet the fear of disappointment lingered ever more insistent. Just then, a sudden ping on his phone jolted him back to the moment. It was a message from Max, asking how the proposal was coming along. Daniel hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. He wanted to share his triumphs, but he knew it was the doubts that crept in that truly needed addressing. Finally, he tapped out a response. Excited but nervous. Trying to confront the existing mindsets before presenting. "What's your take on this?" As he hit send, he felt the weight of the question hang in the air, a silent acknowledgement of the intricate dance between ambition and vulnerability. In search of reassurance, he was already itching for feedback, craving validation for the path he was forging. The reply buzzed almost instantly. "You're ready, Daniel. Trust your vision. It'll resonate with those who are willing. Those who refuse will be the ones who miss out." The echo of those words grounded him, reigniting the fire inside. Maybe it was time to confront both the acceptance and the resistance head-on. Perhaps the road through dissent was essential for genuine connection. As he returned to his desk, setting the stage for the challenges that lay ahead, He resolved to dive deeper into understanding not just how to present his proposal but how to genuinely engage with his colleagues' concerns and fears. He had discovered the strength within himself to initiate change. Now it was time to prepare for the pushback that might threaten to quell his ambitions. In that moment, Daniel felt invigorated with the possibility. He was driven forward by a truth whispering on the periphery: change typically faced trials, but every moment spent in discomfort also nudged growth forward. Would he rise to the occasion or allow the shadows of doubt to capsize him? The clock was ticking, and the meeting was approaching. The pressure unfurled like an unwrapped package, revealing both hope and anxiety, leading him to a question that loomed large. In a battle between his vision and the corporation's traditional mindset, how would he emerge? As dawn broke, Daniel awakened with an unusual intensity coursing through him. This was the day he would reveal his vision to his colleagues and face the potential backlash from Joan and others who entwined themselves in the corporate fabric's traditional threads. The weight of the moment pressed into his chest, yet a strange calmness accompanied it, almost as if he were on the precipice of a great adventure. Showering and dressing felt automatic, but as he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror, he paused. Was this reflection a confident leader, or a man wrestling with self-doubt? The answer was far from clear. He chose a navy blazer, a vital layer he hoped would exude authority. Standing tall, he inhaled deeply before making his way to the office. Arriving early, the silence of the empty workspace offered solace as he nested himself at his desk. He revisited his proposal, making last-minute adjustments to the visuals. Every graph and metric was a piece of a harmonious puzzle illustrating his idea. Yet he realized that the numbers alone wouldn't sway hearts or minds. The adjoining thread of emotion required weaving in, allowing his colleagues to feel the project rather than just understand it. As his fingers danced over the keys, he mentally prepared himself for the discussion. He thought of each person in the room, their past grievances, their victories, and everything in between that colored their perspectives. Some he knew would be resistant, their brows furrowed with skepticism, while others, perhaps, would be eager to explore the possibilities. The key would be to engage them all equally. He pulled out a notepad, jotting a simple phrase: listen, don't just present. The act of writing it down became a tangible reminder. The presentation wasn't solely about him, it was a dialogue, a negotiation of vision and reality. Minutes turned to hours, and the office filled with the bustle of activity. As colleagues gathered in the conference room, Daniel's heart raced in sync with the growing tension in the air. He noted Joan's rigid posture when she entered, her face a mask of neutrality. Could she perceive the vigor he felt, or would she stand as the gatekeeper to his aspirations? The moment arrived. Daniel stood in front of the assembled team, his palms slightly clammy but his voice steady. Each eye upon him reminded him they held both skepticism and curiosity. He opened with a statistic about mentorship who had been previously dismissed but yielded phenomenal returns in employee engagement, a point that generated murmurs among team members. He pressed on, recounting his personal encounter with mentorship that had shaped his career, allowing vulnerability to creep into his delivery gradually. As he navigated through the data and anecdotes, he saw facial expressions shift. Some leaned closer, intrigued, others remained guarded. An attempt to connect was all-consuming, the words flowing from him like a river breaking through a dam. Yet, as he approached the crux of his proposal, a raised hand from the back of the room, a senior manager with a reputation for blunt honesty, Jack interjected, "What makes you think our folks will be receptive to this? They barely talk to each other now. You really believe they'll engage in mentorship?" The blood rushed to Daniel's ears, the question striking like an arrow, but instead of freezing in anxiety, his resolve deepened. "Jack, I understand your concern. Those past failures in teamwork aren't just numbers, they're real people who bring their struggles to the office every day. This proposal isn't merely a form of training, it's an opportunity to break those barriers, to create a community of support. Change takes time and commitment, but the benefits can redefine our work culture." Jack's eyes bore into Daniel's, searching for hesitation, but all he found was a spark igniting the passion within him. A little encouragement surged his direction from around the room, soft vibes of agreement floating among the whispers. He pressed on, pitching the success stories of other organizations, and tailoring his approach to the needs he had gleaned from before. As he wrapped up his argument, the initial inertia of skepticism began to ebb, replaced by a renewed curiosity. Daniel could feel the shift, and it fueled him for what was to come next. Would there be applause or critique? As reflection loomed over the room like the weight of unknown futures, he felt a shift within himself, no longer tethered solely to the fears or validation of others. He had stood, he had spoken, and in that moment, a quiet revolution within himself ignited. The critical question hovered now: would the initiative be accepted, and what doors would it open or close? After he finished, Daniel sensed the next phase unfolding. The team was whispering, heads turning to Joan, seeking her approval. As he watched her processing the feedback, her brow furrowed, eyes narrowing, he knew the real moment of truth was yet to come. It was time to endure the verdict. Would he leave the presentation triumphant, or would the gales of dissent steal away his vision? The tension surged, the outcome teetered delicately in the balance. In the charged atmosphere, time seemed to stretch as the whispers gradually faded, leaving behind a near silence punctuated only by the soft sound of papers rustling. Daniel stood at the forefront, a central figure ensnared in the intricate web of tension. He noticed Joan's demeanor stiffen as she was approached by a couple of team members, their expressions eager yet guarded. Diego, one of his closest allies, leaned over toward Daniel, a small smile breaking through as he whispered, "You did great in there." They're responding. But before Daniel could acknowledge the gesture, Joan spoke up, her voice piercing through the anticipation like a knife. "While I see some merit in your approach, Daniel, I still have considerable doubts." The air tightened, and all eyes turned back to Daniel, the collective gaze reminiscent of a courtroom charged with unspoken verdicts. "Doubts?" he echoed, his heart racing, his mind racing faster. This was a moment he simply could not let slip away. "Could you elaborate on those concerns?" "I am more than willing to discuss and address any issues you see." The words felt powerful rolling off his tongue, a subtle shift in his own narrative. As Joan rattled off her list of objections, Daniel mentally began to question each point, dissecting her arguments even as they were articulated. She expressed skepticism about employee buy-in and engagement levels, emphasizing the historical challenges they faced with similar initiatives. A part of him wanted to withdraw, to acknowledge her validity, to shrink back into the shadows of compliance. But he refused to yield. "Joan," Daniel countered, his confidence burgeoning within the heart of the storm. "I understand that history can shape perceptions. However, we need to break that cycle. This isn't just another initiative, it's a chance to replace resistance with engagement. I believe the team needs something different, a shift in how we view one another." The room buzzed as Pedro, another manager, chimed in. "But what if they don't respond? What if we invest time and resources only to find it falling flat again?" Every question was a potential threat, every doubt a pointed arrow aimed at his vision. Yet, in that moment, Daniel's resolve solidified further. "That's precisely why we need to attempt this," he replied, maintaining eye contact. "What if this time is different? What if we embrace failure as part of the process? We only ask that they try to reach outside their comfort zones. Growth requires discomfort." A low murmur of agreement rippled through the gathering, an encouraging undercurrent Daniel hadn't anticipated. For every person voicing doubt, he caught another nodding, a flicker of hope igniting behind hardened brows. "Look," Daniel continued, bringing a sense of urgency to his tone. "I invite you all to participate in a pilot program. We'll evaluate outcomes, set measurable goals, gather feedback." He could feel the swell of enthusiasm brewing within him, the rhythm of his words finding resonance not just in the room but within himself. "Let us create a stronger workplace together through direct involvement." Just as he finished speaking, Joan's brows furrowed, and Daniel's heart skipped a beat. She was a corporate fortress, and he wasn't sure how those walls would react. Would she stand strong, denying the storm of change he aimed to bring? Or would she begin to rethink her stance, perhaps soften her resolve? "I'll consider a pilot," she said slowly, a guarded concession that could open a door or simply reflect a tactical retreat. "But I'll want specifics, accountability, and clear metrics for success." Daniel felt a rush of adrenaline wash over him. This wasn't the complete victory he had envisioned, but it was certainly a foothold. He nodded, a plan already forming in his mind, while the excitement began coursing through him again. Thank you, Joan. I'll deliver a detailed proposal by the end of the week. As he walked back to his desk amid the chatter of colleagues, a new realization unfurled within him. He wasn't just pitching an idea, he was reshaping the dynamics of his workplace and himself in the process. But as his thoughts soared high, a creeping uncertainty loomed nearby. Would Joan's tentative approval morph into overt opposition once the real work began? Would others rally behind him, or would greater challenges lie hampered on the path ahead? Daniel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the choices he faced, a labyrinth of leadership stretching before him. The next phase awaited, and he needed a strategy to navigate the potential pitfalls, armed with the knowledge that his journey had only just begun. Little did he know that the next interaction he would have would not only jeopardize his efforts but challenge the very core of his beliefs about leadership. Would he rise to the occasion, or would the next wave prove too overwhelming to withstand? The atmosphere inside the office buzzed with a kinetic energy that mirrored Daniel's internal pulse. With the remnants of the meeting swirling in his mind, he felt a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation. He had secured a foothold with Joan, but the journey ahead was laden with the inevitability of scrutiny, second-guessing, and potential pushback. The stakes felt higher than ever, not just for the proposal but for his own self-definition. He took a moment at his desk to recenter, recalling the heartbeat he sensed whenever he was with Max, the pure, unguarded connection that breathed life into his corporate aspirations. What lay before him was more than just a professional milestone, it was a transformation of who he wanted to be. He could feel the walls of his former self beginning to crumble, giving way to a newfound resilience, a resilience that would define the man he intended to become. As the days passed leading up to the proposal submission, he became engrossed in a whirlwind of activity. His evenings transformed into brainstorming sessions with Max, who became his sounding board for ideas and strategies, encouraging Daniel to blend his professional acumen with an empathetic approach. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. A vision began to crystallize, a pilot program not merely to address mentorship, but to embed a culture of collaborative learning into the very fabric of their organization. One particularly glorious Saturday, while tossing a baseball with Max in the park, Daniel felt a powerful surge of affirmation. "You know, Max," he said, his voice tinged with excitement, "this isn't just about helping my old office mates. I want to revolutionize how people connect with each other at work. You're going to help me change lives." Max's wide-eyed enthusiasm shone brightly in his response. "That's what I like about you, Daniel. You're not just a dad for a day, you're becoming an awesome one for good." With those words echoing in his mind, Daniel felt an internal shift. He recognized that success had no singular definition, and it was in the connections he forged that true fulfillment lay. He poured his thoughts and ideas into a comprehensive report, ensuring metrics and expected outcomes were woven into every aspect. This was not just a proposal, it was an embodiment of his conviction. Finally, the day arrived to present the detailed plan to Joan and the executive team. As he stepped into the conference room, he felt an unusual steadiness settle within him. He had come too far and grown too much to cower beneath the weight of potential criticisms. He had not just spent hours crafting a proposal, he had spent weeks redefining his identity against the backdrop of corporate expectations and personal aspirations. Today, I present to you not merely a proposal for mentorship, but an opportunity to redefine how we connect and grow together as a team, he began, each word flowing with newfound confidence. He unveiled the intricate roadmap, the clear objectives, and the anticipated engagement metrics that illustrated the positive trajectory they could create. Joan's stony expression remained much of the time, but the atmosphere was tense with curiosity as eyebrows raised and heads nodded at intervals. As he presented lively case studies from other companies that had successfully implemented similar initiatives, he felt a collective engagement. Their previous skepticism began to falter. After concluding his presentation, Daniel invited feedback, ready to address concerns and doubts. "What we're talking about, I believe, goes beyond numbers," he emphasized. "It's about creating relationships, about fostering an environment where empathy and support flourish. This could transform not just our team dynamics but our company culture." When Jack spoke up, he carefully considered his words. "You've put a lot of thought into this, Daniel. But will it actually work? How do we prevent the same issues from cropping up again? Daniel acknowledged the valid question, leaning into the moment with conviction. I believe every challenge faced in our past provides us with the data to create better solutions. We have to allow our teams the space not just to engage but to fail and find success iteratively. That's how we learn. Joan's gaze bore into him, and a sense of determination tightened in his chest. After a pause that felt expansive in its weight, she nodded slowly, her walls beginning to ease. I appreciate the approach you've taken here, Daniel. A pilot program with clear accountability sounds reasonable. Would you be willing to lead this initiative moving forward? A wave of relief washed over him, but stronger than that was the sense that he was finally taking a stand for not just himself but for a collective mindset shift. Absolutely. I'd love to lead it, he responded, the gravity of the commitment sinking in yet buoying his spirit. As the meeting concluded, Daniel stepped out, adrenaline pulsing through his veins. This wasn't merely a victory, it was the embodiment of a personal transformation that echoed through the corridors of his past regrets and into the bright possibilities of future connections. It was clear he had not just conquered the corporate landscape, he had broken down the barriers within himself. He felt lighter, more fully himself than he could remember. Days slipped into weeks, and the pilot program began to cultivate a new culture of openness within the office. The connections formed blossomed, turning into an ecosystem of strength. Each time he witnessed team members bonding and uplifting one another, he felt a flush of joy. Then one afternoon, in the middle of a strategy session, he suddenly locked eyes with Joan across the table, her face lit with encouragement as she remarked, "This initiative is working, Daniel. People are actually talking, sharing ideas, there's a palpable shift here." And for the first time, he saw her recognition of change not as an obstacle but as a partner in growth. He realized he was no longer just acting on behalf of numbers or profits, he was building a legacy that championed relationships. In that moment, he acknowledged with clarity that he had achieved something monumental. He had taken a leap into authenticity, transforming not just a workplace but the contours of his own identity. As he headed home that evening, he reflected on the journey that had led him here, how the shadows of his past eventually forged a compass guiding him toward genuine human connection. And for the first time, he would welcome parental warmth into his life with open arms. He could finally reignite the estrangement with his father, rekindle lost ties, and embrace the exhilarating prospect of healing. This was it. Fulfillment was not a destination but a continual journey of connection, reshaping one day at a time. Now, more than ever, this journey should be shared. Take this moment, subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that might mirror your own journey. Leave a like now so we can feed the algorithm and reach more souls who need to hear their truth. And don't just observe, comment your reactions and theories about Daniel's transformation. Your thoughts could inspire others. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because together, we can foster a movement of genuine connections and transformative journeys. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.